About you, but you Christ I can do all. Stand up tall with my left foot, post up on the wall. Easy if we fall in the streets, life can get hard. Streets used to be a lot different from what man recall. Me a aim for my post like a soccer ball. Feel run the road that don't need a map at all. Babylon them want to hold me with a strap at all. But man a lion, me no Cancer nor Capricorn.
Though they want to see me fall, I'm gonna be okay. Though my back's against the wall, I'm gonna be okay. They fighting me now, I'm gonna be okay. Jehovah eyes are watching me now, I'm gonna be okay.
Welcome to Hope in the Six. I'm your host, Eddie Martinez, and today we have a special guest, my good friend, Joseph Grmovsek.
Nice to meet you, Eddie. Good to see you again.
How you doing? How you
Great.
doing? So today I want you to just give them a brief description of who you are.
Sure.
Your story.
My name is Joseph Grmovsek, and I am the first and I would think somewhat incredibly still only Canadian to receive a federal sentence of imprisonment for insider trading. I did that for about 15 years on both sides of the Canada-U.S. border, churning tens of millions of dollars and making tens of millions of dollars of profits.
Mm-hmm.
And I did time throughout Canada and a little bit in the U.S. for it.
Okay. So we're going to play a little clip, and then we're going to get back into this.
My name is Joseph Grmovsek. I'm a former lawyer in Ontario. I am the first and perhaps still only Canadian to receive a federal sentence of imprisonment for insider trading. It was an activity that I engaged in over 100 separate deals covering 15 years that eventually resulted in my imprisonment and the death of my co-accused.
Around the world, there's over 100 countries that prohibit insider trading, where if you're someone with confidential information, you are an executive or an officer, an employee, and you trade on your knowledge, that's something that we condemn.
Neither of us remembers whose idea was like, we should do this too, but obviously one of us said, let's do this too. My best friend was here because of me and mistakes I made.
Is there a problem on Bay Street? For sure. In some ways, greater risks than in Wall Street or London.
At a certain point in time, we were making so much money trading, so I left the best firm in Canada and then moving down to being a guy trading stock with insider information full time.
If my job is to find reasons why the rules don't apply to you, well, then I can find reasons why they don't apply to me.
Characteristics of psychopathy, such as manipulation, charming, are really valued in business.
My sense is that in the criminal context, we treat crimes that relate to physical harm very seriously and crimes that relate to economic harm a little bit less seriously.
Joseph has certainly paid for his crime. He's lost his best friend, had the most harshest sentence ever for any Canadian in relation to this crime.
He was my best friend, and then he just disappears after a terrible situation. And I've never filled that void with anyone else or anything else. I could say I think about it every single day.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but I want to get into the story, but before we get into it, I want the viewers to get a little knowledge of white-collar crime. What is white-collar crime?
Well, it's generally, I think the public would see it as sort of a crime committed by business people.
Mm-hmm.
So a blue-collar crime would be considered a crime of violence, let's
Mm-hmm.
say. And a white-collar crime would be like a paper crime, like maybe defrauding someone, or in my case, insider trading, taking information that someone shouldn't have given me and using that to buy stock and make money.
Okay, all right. So pretty much blue-collar is like probably petty theft or little violence, some type of aggression towards robbing, stealing, assault.
That's right. I think if you said, what's the one thing that white-collar crime does not involve, it's like actual violence.
Actual violence. That's probably a reason it's kind of looked at a little lesser.
It's looked differently by the system, in Canada especially,
Mm-hmm.
because it happens rarely. So
Mm-hmm.
so someone like me I am the first inside trader to go to federal prison.
Right.
It's very rare. So when my sentence was 3 years, 3 months, and there's guys in Canada who've done manslaughter, might get something close to that, and I'm inside in a maximum security prison for a white collar where there's no real victim, in the sense that certainly no physical victim.
Yes.
And in my case, no one lost money, which people don't understand. How could you go to prison when everyone made money?
Right.
And it just because of the uniqueness of this law.
Oh, okay. So we're gonna get into that because I wanted a little bit more information on that. But just your story for the little clip we seen.
Yeah.
Let the audience know where they can find that and get the full story in addition to this show.
Sure. The genesis of that documentary, it was a professor up in Ottawa, a Haitian Canadian named Garrick Apollon. He wanted to do a documentary looking at the consequences of white-collar crime from a perspective of those who commit it, like myself,
right,
and the impact on their family, friends, and co-workers.
Right, right.
And to do that to discourage people from doing it. So I heard about that through the grapevine, and I contacted him, and I said, look, I'll do this. I'll volunteer for this project. It's entirely volunteer, but it's got to be real. I don't want it to make me look good. I want the story to be truthful. And there's parts of the system, the parole system and everything else, which I thought was, corrupt or abusive.
Yes.
I want to be able to say that.
Definitely.
I want to keep it real so that when people look at the end product, they'll say, I can learn from this because it's all true.
Right.
In every respect, good and bad, it's all true. So it can be found on collarddocumentary.com or through me, collard.speaker@gmail.com. And we can. So what I've done generally is that we'll do an event, let's say at a professional body, let's say the Certified Fraud Examiners Group, and they'll present the film, and then I'll speak about it and answer questions to the group. And usually if it's a professional body, they want to know how to prevent inside trading or protecting information within their firms. And I give them insights about how I got information to do enough deals over 15 years.
Right.
Like I did over 100 deals. That's not 100 trades of buy, sell. I mean, separate deals, A buying B, company C buying D, 100 times, which is an incredible amount of time to get enough information to fuel that over 15 years. There's certain secrets that I had or techniques that we developed, my co-accused and I, that if I can tell a company that, they can perhaps plug up a hole because there could be someone in their firm doing the same thing.
Similar to the movie Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good example because that shows, I think, the difference between Americans and Canadians. The Americans see this fraudster, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and they say, the FBI contacts him when he's in prison and say, we can learn from you. Let's use your skills to see what flaws we have in the system. Whereas in Canada, I'm, again, still the only one, and I know there's a lot of flaws and holes in the system. And I volunteered. I said, look, I'll tell you what's wrong with your system, where you can patch things up. And for whatever reason in Canada, because maybe it's a smaller market or we would want to admit we're as bad as Americans, quote unquote bad, they don't want to pursue that. So I have to really actively go out to try to speak to groups to help them. Whereas we think if it was America, the FBI would call me in and say, hey, let's see, tell us what we did wrong. Because I did it for 15 years. So clearly there's a flaw in the system of a guy like me who wasn't very careful. Like for some of those years, I wasn't very careful. That I could get away with a crime for 15 years. It's like if someone was a murderer, 15 years committing murders, 100 murders, you would hope they would catch the guy before 100 times, right?
So my question, though, because you said like you're the only one, but are you the only one or people are not getting caught, though? That's a real question.
What I always tell people, it's a crime that it happens more than the regulators and would admit to the public, and certainly more than the public knows. So it happens a lot. Certainly people are caught once in a while, but most times they just pay a fine. Because it's much easier to get a fine payment. And as I say, that the system exists for those administering it. So the guys investigating inside trading, they would rather me pay a few $1 million fine because that goes to their office budget and everything else. Whereas if they try to pursue me criminally, they might not succeed and they get no money, and it's cost to pursue someone criminally. And I pled guilty because I was guilty, but also because the Americans were involved. And their sentences are so much longer, like 25 years, 20 years. So you're almost induced to say, even if I was guilty, I'm not saying I was, but if you were on the borderline, you might plead guilty because the sanctions from that perspective from America were so great. Because at one point when we're negotiating with the different sides, there's a speakerphone in the room. It's someone from America, from the Department of Justice. And he says, if you don't plead guilty, we're going to give you 25 years, and we're going to make sure you have to do your time in New York, not in Canada. So your family's going to come to New York and see you. So I said to my lawyer, I said, we better do a deal today. So, that was a very severe penalty.
In the little skit or the film short thing, documentary we showed, the clip, you were talking about you were a lawyer.
Yes.
So you were a lawyer.
I was a securities lawyer in Toronto, that's right.
Okay, so you practiced law for how long?
About 3 or 4 years. I just started with, and my co-accused was also a securities lawyer in Canada and the United States. So that's why we were able to get so much information. That he was working in an American firm, so we got information when he was in America, and then he moved back to Toronto, the American branch office, where he basically ran the office. So we had a lot of information.
A lot of information, and then so you just got tempted. How did it just initiate?
It's discussed in the film. It's actually a strange story. So I'm just starting as a lawyer. Okay, so my first day. And we're in the lobby of this big, I worked at a big downtown Toronto firm. There's maybe 20 of us starting. And we're about to do orientation around the firm. It's like, 5, 6 floors, big firm. And I'm sitting there talking to somebody, and a summer student comes by wearing white leather driving shoes. And back then I followed Formula One racing, so I knew those were like specifically driving shoes. And I say to this student, I said, why are you wearing these white leather driving shoes around a law firm, which is very inappropriate footwear? And he says, well, I'm wearing these because I'm having a car delivered downstairs right now that I bought with money I made on a deal I worked on. Now, I knew that meant he made money inside trading, because you're not paid by the deal in a law firm. You're paid like a normal person, like a bi-weekly or monthly, a paycheck, right? So I said, well, this is so bizarre. So at that night, I phoned my best friend who was working at another firm. I said, you can't believe this story. This guy's wearing driving shoes, and he basically admitted to everybody that he did inside trading. And then, again, it's mentioned in the documentary. Neither of us knows it said, oh, let's do that too. But we did. And our very first deal, which is crazy, we made $181. But within about a year and a half, we had $1 million deals, American, $1 million US deals. So in a short period of time, you went from a tiny bit of money to a huge amount of money.
Okay, so we're going to go to a commercial break, and then we'll be back hoping the 6. Stay tuned.
My name is Anisha, and I'm the production manager of TCN Network. Have you ever wanted to host your own show? Do you have a message to share? Well, you're in luck. We are looking for dynamic and unique individuals to host their own shows. We are seeking people who are committed, motivated, and energetic. Do you want to be the next Jimmy Fallon, Ellen DeGeneres, or Shane and Ryan from BuzzFeed Unsolved? Start here. Fill out the Propose a Show form on mytcntv.com. We're here to educate, support, and build the community. Can you lead by example? Go the extra mile and seek knowledge? Are you humble, disciplined, responsible, selfless, and enthusiastic? Those are our core values. And if you identify with them, you could be part of a growing network that focuses on positivity and uplifting our community. We can't wait for you to join us on TCN Network, and hope to hear from you soon.
Let's go. Folks be acting like they hard and they so tough. Till somebody run up on you calling your bluff. Now you know you gotta fight up against show enough. What you gonna do now? Get rough, 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 man, it's more deeper than a Jesus piece. I'm wrestling with some demons that don't never sleep. Hit my knees every day before I hit the street. Still trying to learn how to turn my cheek. Trials in my life like night. Problems on the left, problems on the right. Can't finish my course without a fight. Know what I gotta do, right? Get rough, get rough, get rough, get rough, get rough, get rough, get
Welcome back to Hope in the 6. I'm your host, Eddie Martinez. Today we got Joseph Grmovsek, and we're going to get into this part of the segment of the show about getting rough. All right, because we're discussing white collar crime. We're talking about you as a white man going to prison with predominantly probably blacks and natives.
Yeah, you're right. Again, for white collar background, a professional lawyer, I didn't know anyone who had ever been to even jail or prison.
Right.
So I walk in, and right from the start, it's almost like a movie. So I took about 3 or 4 steps. I'm in the Don jail when it was still operational.
Okay.
It was it was a shithole basically at that point. It was the last year of operations, super crowded. The range is about 50 guys enclosed in a very small area. And I walk in, take 3 or 4 steps, and a guy comes up to me right away and he says, "You're that fucking lawyer who did the pyramid scheme." And I said, "I'm not a lawyer," because I wasn't at that point, I was disbarred. "I'm not a lawyer, and it wasn't a pyramid scheme. It was inside trading." And he goes, "I'm going to knock your teeth out." And that started within 5 seconds. And fortunately, he was distracted by the food cart coming, so he walked away. And I decided before I went to prison that I was never going to let anyone bully me. I would take a beating rather than be abused or taken advantage of.
Right.
So as soon as he went to get the food, I actually walked up to him. I followed him, and I said, "Look, we got off to a bad start." And I basically was honest. I go, "Look, I know what you saw on TV, but I am not a lawyer anymore, and it was inside trading, not a pyramid scheme." And then he waits, and he goes, "Oh, it's okay, man." So he didn't know how to take it. He goes, "Is this guy connected? He's not afraid of me? Like, I should be afraid of this guy." And I wasn't. I didn't give off any fear. So and so he must have thought, this guy must know somebody or whatnot.
Right.
And he never bothered me. And then everyone in that range didn't bother me because the toughest guy in the range didn't bother me because they thought he knew something about it. So they didn't, no one messed me up the Don jail for the week that I was there.
That's good. So, this is what I want to ask now. You're sentenced. You're going to go to prison.
Yeah.
What did you do mentally to prepare? Did you any preparation?
Yeah, that's good.
To get tough or
it's a good. Well, it's good. Good. 2 parts then, I guess. One, physically, I started working out, so I was lifting, which people do, and I knew that if I was going to get rough, so I'd watch videos online. There's an MMA fighter called Boss Rutan, and he has like basically street fighting techniques. So I watched this video. I actually bought this video. I remember buying it. So I'd watch it over and over again on how to do close contact, close quarter fighting. Because if I'm going to fight in prison or jail, it's going to be in a jail cell, which is like 8 by 10, right? Really tight. So you learn cheap shot moves. Basically, it's about learning cheap shots. And then mentally, there's websites in the U.S. about how to prepare for prison. So I read them all. How to continue to communicate with your children, writing letters back and forth so that they're not traumatized by the experience. So physically, I did one thing, and then mentally, I did the other aspect. So when I went inside, at that point, I was much bigger. So I went inside, and a guard says, like back then, the movie 300 was out or just come out before. He goes, "You look like Gerard Butler," because I grew the goatee and I was a little bald here.
Okay. So
I thought that was a compliment.
Yeah,
I was a little rougher, right? So I wasn't like, obviously if someone knew my background, they would consider me someone they could victimize, but I wasn't like obvious that way. And I done a lot of research on prison culture, how to speak in prison, how to behave, vernacular, right? So people weren't really sure. So a lot of guys, they'd say, they thought I was a lifer, like I was in for murder, because like I didn't have a murder generally is a one-off mistake for whatever reason, crime of passion. So they thought I was that for the longest time.
Okay.
So then later on, it's in the film. I went to Kingston Penitentiary. They had a tour. So I'm on the tour, and the guard doing the tour said something, and I gave the answer. And she goes, "How did you know that answer?" I said, "Well, I did time here, right?" And she assumed I was a guard here. She goes, "When were you a guard here?" I go, No, I did time here in Kingston Penitentiary. That's my old cell over there.
Wow, you threw them off.
Yeah, I threw them off because I didn't look like someone they would expect, and I was respectful, and everything else. And
so you said you was a little bigger.
Little bigger, tougher.
The muscles came out.
Yeah, again, nothing focuses your mind like the fear of death or beating, right? So you try to make yourself as less a victim as possible as you can. And a lot of guys do that. Or a lot of guys go the opposite way. They're going to try to get small, like to be not threatening to anybody. So you see it goes on both extremes. The guys who go inside a lot, you get bigger. The guys who think, like myself, a lot of guys I've seen inside, white-collar guys, they would try to get small, stay out of the way, not cause problems.
Invisible kind of like.
Be invisible, right.
Okay, so talk to me about the vernacular. What slangs did you learn up in there?
Well, let's see what's appropriate. So let's say you get in. So I'll tell you the story. So I'm in the Don jail again. And I want to phone my family when I walk in. And there's 4 phones there, and 3 of them are occupied, and one in the middle, the phone is off the hook hanging down. So on the outside world, if you see a phone off the hook, you think, well, someone just made a mistake. They dropped it. They let it slip down. And certainly if you want to use a phone, you use the one that's empty, the one that's off the hook. So I walk over to the phone, I pick it up, and I start to dial my family. And this big fella, the guy threatened me again, but he goes, but I think he had to show that there's rules inside, which I didn't know. And he slaps me hard across the side of the face. My ears are numb and ringing, and I go, and I thought it was a deaf face, right? So my face is all deaf, and I learned, of course, it's a deaf us, right?
Deaf us,
yeah, well, actually, I didn't know at the time, right? But my absolute favorite prison word, when I get in, so I'm in the Don jail again, and at the back is there's showers, and the showers have no, if you've ever been to jail or prison, there's no partitions. You can see everyone taking a shower, clear as day, right? So I want to go next in line, take the shower. So I'm looking down there, and I say, oh, no, it's occupied. And, a few minutes later, I look again, and this inmate comes up to me and says, what are you, a hammer hawk? Like you're looking at the men's penises, the hammers, right? And I started laughing. I go, that's the best word I've ever heard. Like a hawk, you have the eyes of a hawk at the guy's hammers, right?
So, analyzing
you're analyzing what you're not supposed to, right?
On an intellectual, like, okay, that's a good word.
That's a great word, right? So you see words like that or things like that apply to inside that you don't really carry on the outside.
Right. So did you start using those vernaculars at times?
Yeah, you have to. So, example, a word that I tell people when I got out, the worst word you can call someone in prison in Canada is goof.
Oh, yeah.
You call someone goof. Whereas outside, that's what kids call each other.
Right.
Oh, you're such a goof. You're a goof.
Right.
I seen guys inside call another guy a goof, and the guy wants to kill him. And he would do anything. Like he was legitimately going to try to kill the guy for calling him a goof. And if you thought about it intellectually, you go, who cares?
Right,
like, what is that? What is it? And I'd say to the guys, go, what does it even mean? And no one knows what it means. They thought goof stands for like get off and fight, like GOF or something, or it means something else. But no one knows specifically. They just know this is the worst word for whatever reason, and I have to do something if I'm called a goof. I have to fight, right?
So what I understand from the word, but I'm learning the culture too because I'm from New York City originally.
Oh yeah.
But it's like child molester,
Yeah, but that's what they say, right?
But it's just
a diddler is another one for child molester, right? Like people think, okay, well, if you're a child molester, you're going to get beat up inside, and you would think that's probably true. But I found inside that there was child molesters in the area that they would trade drugs, the prescription drugs inside, to be protection. So you would think if you want to be vindictive on the outside, well, that child molester who molests these kids are going to go to prison, he's going to get beat up. Or killed. Doesn't happen for the most part. That he ends up trading he gets overprescribed prescription drugs like antidepressants, and he trades them away to other inmates to protect him. So,
but in the U.S. it's definitely different. I used to work in jails and stuff like that. They do keep separates. So once you're convicted of that, because they see you, because you got the news, right? You got the TV, and you see it. So once they see that and they see that guy coming in, they hollering ready to tear him up. So they automatically put him in a segregation. So
what's been mentioned in the news, in jail, usually there's no sound till about 12 o'clock at noon or 1 o'clock, right? Because guys want to sleep in. It's rough to sleep there. So they only have, so basically all the shows that people are watching on the TV, one TV or 3 or 4, is the CP24, the news channel. So that's okay. I was on the news, so like everyone saw it because there's nothing to do. Everyone's staring at the TV on the wall. I go, that's that guy. Famous, and then this guy comes in, he goes, oh, that's the guy. And then no one's paying attention what they're saying because there's no sound, right? So he thought I'm a pyramid scheme, right?
And
that's why they come up with that. Certainly, unless you know inside trading, you can't really, it's not going to explain it in detail on a little news clip on CP24, right?
Okay. So we're going to go to a break, but after the break, we're going to get into another portion and talk about like life after prison and and how it affects family. We'll get a very deep, emotional part of the show. Thank you for watching. Hope in the 6. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Shadow Auto.
Welcome back to Hope in the Six. I'm your host, Eddie Martinez, with Joseph Grmovsek, and today we're talking about white-collar crime. At this moment, we're going to get into a portion of the show we read either inmate letters or we read letters from prison, far as the news article. We have a news article that's called Cell Count. It's for prisoners, ex-prisoners, and their families, and now for the viewers also. So I'm just going to read a portion because we want their voices to be heard on the outside also, right? The Hope in the Six focus is really on rehabilitation and reintegration. So we want to help their voice be heard, and we're trying to reduce crime. So what better way to help them? Allow them to express themselves and work on strategic planning on what to do when they come out. So that's what Hope in the Six is about. So at this time, I'm going to read a portion of this article called Struggle and Sacrifice by Nolan R. Turcotte. I began my life sentence at the age of 16 in the Paul Dojak Youth Center, which is located in Regina, Saskatchewan. I have been incarcerated for the past 12 years and done time in Saskatchewan Penitentiary, Edmonton Institution, and the Special Handling Unit, Kent Institution, and Millhaven Institution. I remember the very first time I participated in Prisoners' Justice Day. I was 18 years old in Saskatchewan Penitentiary on August 10, 2009. I was housed in Unit 6 Max, which was known as Gangland, and I was on B Block, with my crew, who no longer I affiliate with by choice. And our allies, they showed me how I was supposed to conduct myself on PJD, which was, as you already know, no eating or working. This is in regards to Prisoner Justice Day. The days leading up to August 10 had me thinking about how difficult it might be to go a whole 24 hours without eating. But then the day came, I shook off the hunger pains with pride. I always been the kind of person to ride a righteous cause. Plus, I counteracted the hunger pains with logic. I reminded myself that I have gone without food many times in life. Growing up on the streets and always ending up on the run constantly left my stomach growling. There were times I had to break into the food bank after it closed up just so I could get my hands on some food. I was able to survive when I had no food or shelter, so I can obviously make it through a single day with zero food intake. So that's a little snippet, a clip of the full article. Prisoner's Justice Day, where you ever experienced Prisoner's Justice Day?
Yeah, I think what the public outside prisons has a misunderstanding of it. No one's trying to celebrate being a prisoner or make it great.
That's right.
The whole point is to be treated with humanity, so that the prisoners can respect the society that has punished them. Because if you treat them with abusively, which I've seen people be treated abuse, you have less respect for the people punishing you, and when you get out, you have less respect for society necessarily. So it's about just wanting fair treatment as a human being, so that you say, all right, I did wrong. I was punished fairly by a fair system. I want to get back, be part of that system when I get out. So it's a forward-thinking way to look at things. Whereas, for whatever reason, our society, the only group you can openly discriminate against today is ex-offenders. You could say, I'm not going to rent you that apartment because you went to prison. I'm not going to give you that job because you went to prison. I'm not going to, a lot of things you can't do just because, which you could never say about another group, individual group, but you can against ex-offenders. And Prisoners' Justice Day is just to say, hey, we don't want special treatment. We want to be treated, we will take our punishment like men and like women in women's prison, but we want to be treated like a human, like you would want to be treated, or your child to be treated if they were unfortunate enough to go to prison for a mistake. And
I'm going to read a little excerpt from an article I found online. It said, in regards to Prisoner Justice Day, it says, Black Canadians are overrepresented in federal prisons by more than 300%. First Nation, Métis, Inuit are overrepresented by nearly 500%. Blacks and Indigenous people, as well as homeless, unemployed, and disappropriately refused bail, and are in prison on remand while in jail. Members of these communities are more likely to be disciplined and less likely to be paroled. This is something that I've seen a lot of people talk about on media and everything, which is just a fact. It's a known fact, race plays a role, in parole and all that stuff like that.
I think it's also economics. So I'll give you an example. So at one point, I had my parole revoked by a parole officer who later on was fired. So she abused her position, but she revoked my parole. I had a parole hearing, And because I was a lawyer before, I knew I was entitled to see all my documents ahead of time. So at one point, they made allegations against me, and I said, who said that? Like, I totally fiction. And I said, who said that? I want to know the name. They said, we don't have to give it to you. I said, no, according to the law, you have to give it, or you have to withdraw that. And I filed an appeal, and they withdrew all these. So someone or the parole officer made up false statements, like I had kicked down a door and I'd beaten someone up. I said, this never happened. But for most guys in the system, they won't know to challenge that. They go, oh, well. And at one point, the parole officer said, well, we're going to do the parole hearing now without giving you all the documents. I said, no, I'm entitled to, because if you don't do it within a certain period of time, you have to let me go. So I said, you've got to give me the documents or let me go. So, but I knew the rules. And I remember the parole officer, when I said I didn't accept her interpretation, she just rolls her eyes to the guard like, who the hell is this guy? That's right. And I only did that because I had the confidence, not because I was white, but because of my background. But I could see most guys, maybe not as educated, certainly not understand the rules of law and evidence. They would go, okay. And so they had the parole hearing and they would lose. Whereas I was only the second person in 5 years, the chaplain told me at Fenbrook Medium Prison, to have won such a hearing. And where I exposed the abuses of the parole officer. And then here's the system for you. Afterwards, I said, well, I want a copy of this parole hearing, because the parole board basically crapped all over the parole officer, and noted the abuses, and they said, well, we lost the videotape. So they didn't want me to sue. But just imagine now what goes on with and I knew what I was doing. And it still screwed me over at the end. Whereas a guy who didn't know the system, didn't know legal etiquette, I 100% would get screwed over.
So that's the advantage you had, especially the legal knowledge. We had a few lawyers on the show already. Shout out to Julia and Nia. We had them both on the show, and they were talking about know your rights, like just explaining certain rights that we have. We talked about carding, we talked about discrimination, different things, So yes, you as a lawyer now, you kind of had the leverage.
I knew to read. I knew to read documents I was signing. Whereas I remember at one point the parole officer hands me a document. It says sign there at the bottom. I said, well, let me read it first. She goes, why do you want to do that? I go, why wouldn't I do that? So I can only imagine what rights guys are signing away inside because they're too afraid to say, no, I want to read this, or maybe they don't know how to read. Yeah, some can't read. So I tell people, you'd be so surprised how many people inside. Like I was reading documents for guys on the range that they can't read, or even they go through the high school equivalency program in prison, which I found to be not very credible.
That's right.
It's just to give people diplomas, so the prison says, look how many guys we gave diplomas to. I knew a guy who got a diploma, and that day he still could not read at maybe a grade 2 level. So I was still reading any of the basics for him.
Right, and that's why we're talking about reintegration and properly. What are the tools are there provided? But I want to talk to you about the parole hearing, and just because I have a similar situation.
Sure.
I had a client, a young youth that I'm working with, and we had a parole hearing, and I sat in the parole hearing, and the thing about it is they didn't want to let him out on parole unless he had a house. He wasn't federally, so there's no halfway house for him. So that option is not there. So they said if I don't have a permanent address, he cannot go. So I'm saying, who's going to give me like a permanent address for a guy in prison? Like, how do I advocate? I mean, since then I've been working on some strategic planning with organizations that they say they specifically don't work on this, but at the moment there's none available. So how? I mean, isn't it a catch-2020? What's that situation?
Well, I'll tell you. Here, it's funny you say that. Here's the twist in my case. So I won the hearing, and to be allowed out, the parole officer is supposed to check out where you want to live and do a community assessment. It's called a community assessment, so to see it, like if it's proper to live, let's say not a drug den or something like that.
Right.
So the parole officer just lost the hearing. She refused to go do where I wanted to live. So she refused to let me. So I was stuck in. Even though I won parole hearing, I'm supposed to be released. She won't do the next step of doing a community assessment where I want to live. So I'm stuck inside. So I was sent to a halfway house downtown Toronto for about 2 months. And I go, I'm free, but I can't leave because she won't do this next step. So I filed another appeal to the parole board, and the day before the hearing, they cut me loose. So just wasted my time, drag it out. And again, I knew my rights, and I was still mistreated by the system. So I can only imagine a guy, in this case, who doesn't know his rights as well or doesn't have everything lined up, he's going to be run over.
Very challenging. And if we're really trying to help society, because prisoners going to be let out one day.
Sooner or later, right?
So then we have to have something.
If I ran the system, for prisoners inside, I would have allow for Skype calls to their family, video calls, because all the prisons in Canada are generally far away from population centers. So it's 4, 5, 6 hour drive for some people, and then if they get there, it's locked down. For whatever reason, the prison's locked down. So I know a lot of people go for visits and they can't visit. So let guys do it for good behavior inside. Maybe a monthly call to their kids or their wives, girlfriends, whatever, boyfriends, and to talk to them. So they stay connected. So when they get out, they still have all these family connections. So a guy, when he gets out, he says, well, I'm still in touch with my family. They'll let me stay with them at their home till I get settled, right?
Right. A reconciliation is
it makes sense, right? And also, let guys have proper ID. So what happens is when you're in federal prison at that time, twice a year they come to make sure they do your ID. So when you get out, you have ID. That should be done automatically for everybody. Because there's guys in that window who get released without ID. Then what do you do when you're outside?
Scrambling again,
And again, if you want to leave your prison life behind you, someone says, why don't you have ID, right? You have to say, because I was just got out of prison for 12 years, right?
So we got to go to a break, but we'll be back after this short messages. Hope in the 6.
Are you retiring smart? Make your home's equity work for you. With your home's equity and our 30 years of experience, the Retire Smart Properties team can help you achieve the quality of life you've always wanted. Our services are 360 degrees. We'll give you advice, take care of staging and selling, and help you find the perfect home and community to transition to. It's time to enjoy the retirement lifestyle you deserve. Visit our website today to learn how you can use your home to retire comfortably. The Retire Smart Properties team, powered by RE/MAX West.
Is there any positive stories or any good times, any positive story?
I'll tell you a story that I had in Kingston Penitentiary. Most people wouldn't see it as a positive, but you take what you get, so I view it as a positive. So I'm in Kingston Penitentiary, my parole being put into maintenance. It's dark, the windows are broken, it's freezing. Guys would take off their extra shirts and stuff them in the holes in the window because the snow was coming. It was a terrible place. So after about a month there, I'm the senior guy in the range. So every guy's tougher than me. There's guys with tattoos under the eye, shows they killed somebody. I used to say, as a joke, the only teardrops under the eye I have are the ones I cry in my pillow at night. So it's a rough place. So we can't do that. So I'm handing out the food trays, and guys are riding me a bit because they know I don't really belong. But I decided I can't let guys abuse me inside because I don't want a reputation as a guy who can be abused or bullied or whatever else. So I fight back. I joke back and forth. And one inmate, his name was Frankie, I remember, younger guy than me, a little bit bigger, and he starts riding me, but his insult related to my kids. And I hadn't seen my kids in a while, and it crossed the line. Everyone knew it crossed the line. So then I insulted him back in a way that crossed the line. I wish I knew that I could remember the insult, but I know it crossed the line. And all the guys in the range, there's 30 guys, it's quiet, because they know I crossed the line too. And then Frankie says, when I get out, when my cell gets cracked, 20 minutes.
When the cell cracks,
can kill you. But he says it loud enough for everyone to hear. And Frankie's been inside a long time. Everyone knows him.
When you say that.
He knows it's serious because he can't have a reputation of a guy doing idle threats, right? So I should hold across the line. So I go back to my cell, and because I'm the cleaner, my cell is open. Everyone else is locked up. And it's dark in my cell, and I go, God, can you help me? I start praying. Because nothing good's going to come of it. Either I'm going to win this fight miraculously and get extra time, or I'm going to get, maimed or dead. There's no upside to this fight. So I start praying so hard. I'm praying to myself, God, help me out this time. I really need your help. I never pray, but I need your help. All of a sudden, I hear an explosion of metal. Boom! And then a bunch of steps. Boom, 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 boom. And all of a sudden, the cage slams shut, bang, really hard. And a bunch of guards run past me. And I push my head against the bars, right, looking down. What's going on, right? And all of a sudden, I see a couple guards come with a stretcher. They go in, and they come out. And on the stretcher is a guy flailing away, spazzing out. It's Frankie, the guy that was going to fight me, having a seizure. They carry him away. I never see him again. So I said that was either incredible coincidence. It's true. So I said that was either incredible coincidence, or or I have powers in my mind and made it happen, or divine intervention.
Yeah, you prayed to God, man.
I prayed to God. It's either incredible coincidence or somehow.
No, that was God's.
Because what are the odds of that, right? And the guys are yelling, they go, on the range, go, oh, he was scared. He was scared of getting beat up, right? Never saw him again. I don't know if he lived or died or whatever happened to him. And I go, I was crazy after that. So that was a positive. I go, even your darkest moments when you ask for help, you can get it in the most unusual ways. And that's mine. So that's why I tell the story to people. I go, They go, oh, it was terrible in prison. I go, yeah, it was horrible, but this is the positive I took from it. They go, when I'm down, I know I'm not out. You know, maybe luck, maybe coincidence, or maybe God helped me out, but I got helped out because there's no other way to say it.
Welcome back to Hope in the Six. I'm your host, Eddie Martinez. Today we're talking about white-collar crime with Joseph Grmovsek. You know, that's a good story. I'm a positive one, you know, and like you said, you know, that's a positive for you that you took away. It's important. And I always tell the people that I work with, it's not about just our intervention, but divine intervention. And that situation definitely looked like a divine intervention because
100%.
What are the likelihood of that happening?
It's incredible. And I use that experience. It motivated, like, part of this, I want to leave everything behind me, never talk about it again, go on my life. But I used that experience. I said, well, there has to be a reason that happened. So I used that to motivate me to speak to groups. Like I spoke to law students, MBA students, professional bodies, corporate boards of public companies. I go out of my way that someone would say, well, it's kind of embarrassing you tell your whole life story. But I feel that had to happen for a reason.
Definitely.
And I have to maybe impart so I can give someone else maybe wants to go down a life of crime some way, a pause to think, you know what, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should think a little bit. And when you think a little bit long-term about your life and consequences, ethics, whatever ethics you have, they sort of manifest themselves. And you go, you know what, that's right. I'm not going to do it. And that's why I do it, I think, because of that story.
Right. So let me ask you something. Through all of this, what are your life lessons? What did you learn, you know, from all of this?
Well, at one level, you learn what's really valuable to you. So when I was doing this, you know, making lots and lots of money, I think, oh, money's really valuable to me. But then all the money was taken away. And it really didn't make a difference in my mind. Like so it wasn't important. What was most important to me was family and friends. So my co-accused was my best friend. I spoke to him every day for 20 years. Then all of a sudden, he's gone out of my life. That's a cost that never can be fixed. And the impact on his family, his child, my own case, you know, being absent from my children, and then the repercussions of that is still carried to this day, unfortunately. Like, these are things you never think about what's really valuable.
Right. Is there a relationship with the children? How that works?
I have two children. I have a younger daughter, which I see all the time. But my son, when he was 13, he must have Googled me, or maybe he was bothered at school, or maybe some of my ex-wife's relatives said something. He said, Dad, I never want to see you again. And I said, I tried to find out what's going on, and then all of a sudden, cut me off. So then I had to go to court and went through the whole process. But because you're an ex-offender, they just said, well, now at this point, they dragged it on long. He's 14. Well, he doesn't want to see you. Too bad. So I have not seen or spoken to my son in over 3 years, which is very, you can't, if I had known that back when I started this, saying, you know, in the future, the person you love the most will reject you because of the mistakes you made. And your best friend will die, commit suicide because of what you're doing. I never would have done it, obviously.
I want to share this experience with those on the street, too. You know, the audience watching, those that are caught up in the justice system. Two things you said, as far as the money thing, it means nothing. It's about family. Because a lot of times, especially in the hip-hop culture, everybody talking about money. I got rings, I got watches, I got cars, and all that. And you had all that because you touched millions, right? Man, you was like a millionaire.
Oh, yeah. Man, multi-millionaire. No, I'm not, I don't say it like, when people say, oh, you're like making it sound glorious. No, it's because it's realistic. I tell it real. It was a lot of money, American money, which, you know, higher than Canadian.
Of course.
Millions and millions of dollars just come in so easy. And here's the point. It was coming so easy, you didn't appreciate it. You didn't enjoy it. So, like, one morning you wake up, a stock deal would happen, you'd make like $800,000 in that morning. And a normal person would be, oh my God, my life is fantastic. It's like winning the lottery, right? And me go, okay, what's next? When's the next deal? It was nothing because you weren't earning it. It wasn't like, you know, pure that you felt the satisfaction in it. So you couldn't take pride in it. So it was nothing. So like, if you're living on the streets making money illegally, yeah, it might be a good rush at a certain point in time, but you know you're not proud of that money. You can't.
That's what I want to tell them, audience. Like, all this boasting about money is like really means nothing.
It's fake boasting. It's fake boasting.
Right, and then you end up in prison. And
you end up in prison.
And then it kind of come back to the same story as even though it was in the same avenue. But it end up being locked up, losing your family, losing time too. Because a lot of time, I grew up with my father behind in the prison walls, right? So I lost a lot of time, you know, that I could have had and could have probably made me a better person.
Never comes back.
So these are the consequences. And though we laugh and we have some good times and there's funny stories, I do want to get to the serious element of it. Like, this is your life. You jeopardize everything. You know what I mean? Even though yours was not hurting anybody, you know, there was no physical victim, but still it ended up backlashing on you. You know, at the end of the day, you lost your wife.
Yep. The people I cared about the most were the most direct victims of my crime, which you never think about when you're doing, because no one's going to commit a crime to hurt your own family or friends, whatever, but that's who was hurt the most by my crime.
Right. So before we close out, because we're going to come to an end now, I want to talk about life after prison. What happened now? I mean, was it hard to get employment?
Oh, it's incredibly difficult in Canada more than the U.S. because I've met a lot of Americans through this system, and I think Americans are more forgiving or giving of second chances because more people in the U.S. have criminal records. There's more people you interact with. Whereas Canada, it's relatively rare. Certainly in my circle I was in. So when I get out, I wanted to get an apartment. Well, I couldn't get one. People wouldn't rent to me because of criminal record. They Google search me or they do criminal sec. So I finally had to. I was fortunate enough. I had to scrape together money, and I paid a whole year's rent up front, which most guys can't do. So what do? That's one thing.
Right.
Getting a job, again, Google, well, I always say Google's not my friend. So at one point, I have an unusual last name, I know. So at one point, I'm sending out resumes. I said, I'll do a typo on my resume. I'll move some letters around backwards.
Yes.
So when they Google me, they're not going to find my criminal record.
Right.
So what happens? So then I said, well, let me check this name that I just made up on my computer on Google. So I type in the name, my name spelled incorrectly, and Google says at the bottom, says, don't you mean Grmovsek? Don't you mean the other guy? I go, I can't even escape by making mistakes.
That's right.
So I had it was very difficult so that I could not get full-time employment, it's certainly in a white-collar world. So I have to basically employ myself, which I do business consulting, which using my legal background and corporate background at a much, much lower level, advising people. But, I would love to contribute in an office atmosphere, working in an office, doing what I could do it well, what I once did well. But for whatever reason, I've had opportunities where one partner of a firm would say yes, and another partner would say, no, we don't want this guy, or things like that nature. It's very difficult. And I know, I don't look like an ex-con kind of thing, right? And it's so difficult for me that I can only imagine a guy maybe comes out with tats on his face, or with a long history, 15, 20 years.
So let me ask you this last question. This is the last question, and this is more on a racial element.
Sure.
Because you in the corporate world, you probably surrounded by most white people that are millionaires or have money, or just not even millionaires but have good money.
Yeah, professional people.
So professional. You're in a professional capacity, and your perception or perspective on minorities, black people, or whatever probably was a certain way because you're not associated with them. You never lived with them. You have a perspective, but now you went to jail with them. You kind of merged. So have your perspective changed, or you already was an open-minded guy? Or
I'll tell you a funny story. So I get into Millhaven, and when you get to Millhaven, they assess you. That you're being interviewed. So at one point, I remember the guy assessing me. I know his name. I don't want to say it, but he says, do you have any problem with black people? And I said, no, not at all. Now, he must ask that question to white people all the time, and I guess most white guys say they do. So I said, no, not at all. So every one of my cellmates going forward was a black person and had killed at least one person, okay? So whatever reason, I got murderers and black people worked out, right? So I never had an issue racially. I think because you're in a difficult situation inside, and I don't know about American prisons, but I don't think Canadian prisons are as racialized. It's, there's a power dynamic, but it's not race-based. I found, so I had no problem with black inmates going throughout. There are a lot of natives in Canada because I think of substance abuse issues.
Right.
And they live far up north, a lot of them. So you're right. It's disproportionately in Canadian prisons, disproportionately jails, for sure, it's blacks. And disproportionately in prisons overall, it's probably blacks and certainly natives.
Definitely.
White people like myself. Because you would think, let's say when I'm about to be sentenced, I got a long sentence for Canada because the Americans were involved. Because normally I could say, I come from a good family, I'm a professional, I'm not a risk to anybody. And that line would work normally, but the Americans said, no, he's got to do jail time, right? But so that's why I think a lot of white people don't go to the prison system because they can make that line that makes sense. I have two parents, I have kids, I have a job, right? Whereas a minority person might not be able to make the same statements, or he has a history of crime throughout, like small petty crime throughout before they made a big offense. So that's how I think the system discriminates against minorities, not necessarily intentionally, but just by circumstance, not looking at all the different circumstances why you're there in prison right now.
All right. Well, thank you, audience, for watching Hope in the Six. Thank you for coming and sharing your story, Joseph Grmovsek. Tune into Collard, right?
Yeah, Collard. If someone wants to speak to the group, it's collard.speaker@gmail.com, and I'll work from there.
Thank you. Hope in the Six. God bless.
Ting you. It's great. It's great. Sorry, I loved it. It's great.
I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I'm gonna be okay. I will fear no evil that will my rod and my staff. I'm gonna be okay. Thou preparest a table before me in front of my enemies. I'm gonna be okay. Thou anointed my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. All on my shoulder, I'm a soldier, Lord, I told you. Run with Jehovah, so nobody can test. Every day of my life, I'm blessed. Yes.